you've seen them at the front of the gallery. But we also provide a curatorial advisor. And Eddie served as Anna's curatorial advisor when she was making the work. He is a graduate of the Art Institute of Chicago, and he's now the assistant curator at the McNay. So he's going to talk to us a bit about Anna, and then Anna's going to talk a bit about her work and then respond to any questions you might have. So please join me in welcoming Ed Hayes. Thank you.
You're welcome. Glad you're all able to make it out here tonight. I see some familiar faces and a lot of new faces. Anna and I are from San Antonio, and we see the same faces over and over. I think this happens in Austin too, so it's great to see some fresh faces. Anna grew up in Corpus Christi. Moved to San Antonio at age 16. Got her BFA from the Art Institute of Chicago, and then went on to UCLA for her master's. She moved back to San Antonio after her time in LA, and that's where this body of work starts here. So everything we see is from this time after she's in LA. It's her return to San Antonio, and working very closely with some subject matter right around her studio. What else here? Thank you, Chris and Rachel at Women in the Work, and your staff have been so flexible and generous in working with us from so far away. It's been really easy to work here, and the show is so clean and beautiful. It feels like a museum show. It's a wonderful space. Thank you. Also, I'd like to thank the lenders to the exhibition. That's something that we were talking about earlier, that because of the system of Women in the Work, the kind of freedom that they allow the artists and the curators, there's no pressure here to sell. You can actually, have some work on loan from private collections for the show, and that made it possible for us to show kind of a nice, comprehensive body of work from the past couple of years from Anna. So I'd like to thank Drs. Harriet and Ricardo Romo from UTSA, from the private collection, who works here on view. Also, Bank Smith, Nina Hassel, as well as the UTSA Art Collection. The University Collection has also acquired work. So I met Anna about 2 years ago at an opening. That opening that I went to was sold out before I even walked in the door. So there's just amazing momentum here and interest in her work. And without anything further, help me introduce Anna.
Thanks. Well, thank you guys for coming. When I woke up this morning in San Antonio, the sky was completely black and there was thunder. It was like 10 in the morning, so I called Chris and I called Rachel and I said, are we going to postpone? It's really bad. She's like, oh no, it's great in Austin. So I'm really glad to be here because over there it's really bad. There's like thunderstorms like all day, so it's really good to be here and see the blue sky. Well, I guess I'll start out just talking about the paintings. A lot of people ask me where I get my imagery from and where I find it. So when I moved back to San Antonio from Los Angeles, I was there for about 10 years. And I'm from San Antonio originally. So when I moved back, I moved into a neighborhood that was kind of on the east side of San Antonio, so I could rent a house because I have a dog, so I wanted something where I could live. And it's kind of out of the way from where I lived before. So as I was driving around, I thought, I was doing landscape paintings in LA too, like neighborhoods and houses, but they all really felt like I had seen them somewhere before, because you probably did, like in the movies, there's pictures and you feel like I've seen this before. So when I moved to San Antonio, I thought, oh, the houses here are so unique, and the way people, and it's not just San Antonio really, but kind of all of South Texas, come from Corpus, and the things people put outside their houses, it's almost like the inside of the house, like the soul of the house comes out into the outside, and there's objects and things that come from the inside. So I kind of see them as portraits of people, like the actual houses of the people who live there. And mostly what I do is, I was telling Sarah Fish, she's the writer that's writing about my show for the catalog for Women in Their Work. And the way I described it to her, I said I felt like when I drive around the streets of San Antonio, I just kind of get in my car with the camera and just go. And I told her it almost felt like a planchette from a Ouija board, just kind of moving around wherever, like I'm just making a left here, right here, just wherever, all day long, and just taking pictures of things. And then sometimes I'll mix and match, like I'll take one car from one location and then another house, and then I have different skies, mix the skies. But I wanted to feel a little bit like stage sets, to where the lighting is a little artificial and almost like a stage set that's not really real. Like some paintings, maybe almost like you may see something that's not really there, like maybe a hallucination, like maybe like the piñatas on that one over there, almost like they're there, but you maybe are projecting them and they're not really there, like this cart balloon over here. I wanted to have that kind of quality, like you're projecting something that's not So I kind of see them as stage sets for a drama that's taking place in the paintings. And a lot of people ask me why there are no people. For the most part, there aren't people in the paintings, but I see that as kind of the reason I do that is because I feel like they're portraits of the people, they're just not there. It's just kind of the after effects of what's left. And I feel like with a person, it would take too much attention away and become more of a, I just don't like to be people, that's what it is. So yeah, basically all these paintings are from this year and last year, but since I moved back to San Antonio, which was in 2009, so these go back to 2010. And then there's the new ones, and the gouaches are new, and the two large ones are new also. But they're oils, and the gouaches in the front room are all watercolor gouache. And I can't think of what else to say, but you said you were going to open it to questions, right, Rachel? Does anyone have any questions?
I have one. I lived in San Antonio for a while, and I recognize the west side basically. So is that where you sort of, maybe some south side too, but it's two parts, I guess. Why the automobiles in the houses, or can you explain sort of the cultural sort of significance of automobiles in houses in the south side and west side of San Antonio?
Well, like some people say, like, that it's the south side or the west side. Really, there's some from different neighborhoods. Like this one here is from the south side. That's kind of close to North Star Mall. Okay. But predominantly, that type of house, south side and the west side are mostly Hispanic communities. If you're not familiar with San Antonio, that's what the south side and the west side mean. But where I grew up in Corpus was kind of that type of, same type of houses, same type of cars, and the same type of demographic. It's kind of where I grew up. So it just feels like home. I'm like, oh, this is what I like. And also because I feel like in houses like that, the same family will live there for many years. Unlike other neighborhoods that are new, or really a new family, or like in LA, no one really owns their home. They'll move out and sell it, and then move out to the outskirts. Whereas in San Antonio, people tend to stay in their house forever. So you'll have like a horseshoe on the door that was placed by your grandfather, and so things will stay forever. Just kind of new generations will move in. And I see the cars. I kind of see the cars like that's kind of a more youthful thing. Like maybe the younger people who live in the house will have their cars, and that's their private space. So that's their space, their car. They can drive away from the house. And I like how it works together with the house. And it's just, when I was in Chicago, I painted nothing but cars. And really large scale cars. It's just something I've always liked. So I kind of like the idea that the house is a house, but the car is also a house too. But it's more personal, and it kind of represents the driver. And it's a more private space than the house is, even more so.
The car is like a segue between like public and private?
Yeah, sort of, I can see that. And also I like when people customize their cars, like this one with the doors, when they turn it into like a DeLorean.
Was that real?
Yeah. Like I was driving around and I saw that. So I drove my car into the middle of the street, and I was right in the middle of traffic because there was no traffic, and I jumped out real quick and took a photograph of it because he was washing it, the guy was. I took him out, but he was sitting there, and he was detailing his car, but he had all the doors open at once. So I kind of like this one as I feel like it's a shell. Like there was somebody that was once in there and they just left, and it just kind of left a shell behind of the car.
It's a cocoon?
Yeah, remember I was telling you that? I felt like it was a cocoon or like a shell. That's what the name of the painting references. It's got almost like a shell that's left behind. But, I do put a car, I kind of like how the car plays with the house too, like the people who live there, and it's like expressive, the way people will customize their cars, an expressive thing, and the way people decorate their homes. And I see them as portraits, and actually somebody who had come into one of my shows last year had seen, I don't have it here now, but he had seen a gouache. He was like a young guy, and he looked at it, and he just kind of went like this, and he goes, and he looks again, and I'm standing over here looking at him, and he goes, and he's like, oh my God, and I said, what? And he goes, that's my car, that's my car. He lived 2 blocks away from where I lived, and I said, is it okay that I painted it? And he goes, yeah, I just can't believe that that's my car. He's like, it was on First Friday, so they were just out with their friends drinking, and he was probably like 20. And he was just in there, he got in at the last minute, right before we closed the gallery doors. He walked in with some friends, so I'm sure he was shocked. He's like, here's my car. He was like, that's my car. And he goes, that's my mom's decoration. And so he brought his mom in, and I heard him tell his mom, he goes, look, Mom, it's art. That's kind of cool, but that's never happened. It hasn't happened yet because usually I change the colors of the houses. Like I'll change something or change the address or this kind of mix and match houses and cars. But I thought it was interesting also because I started to talk to his mom and she says, yeah, those Christmas decorations there, she says, those are, my neighbors helped me put those up because I was really sick that year. This past year I had cancer, so I wasn't able to do my decorations. So all my neighbors jumped in and they decorated the house for me. So I really like that, learning something about the people who live there, because usually I don't, I just kind of drive by and click, 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 and I know nothing of the people who really live there. So it's interesting to find out just the backstory on these decorations I painted, like, oh, this is the story, and they live in the neighborhood, so I'm giving him a little giclée print of it, and so he actually pulled his wallet out. He goes, how much do you want for it? I'll make you a print. And I was like, oh, it's already been sold, but I'll make you a print. So, but it was kind of nice. His whole family came in to see it.
Can I ask you about the perspective? Kind of segues from that. It seems like, I mean, they're all very like head-on from the streets. You can kind of imagine you driving around, taking the pictures. Is that kind of intentional? Do you have any interest in like getting closer and more intimate with them, or do you like them as kind of a distant thing?
Yeah, like I wanted to feel like you're driving by in a car and you're stopped, or you're across the street, so it puts the viewer like in a position where you're looking at it, not up close. Although later I wouldn't mind getting more into the inside of a house and the things that people have in their houses, which I always like to see. Like when I'm staying at someone's house, I always want to know like what do they have in their cabinets, or I want to know like everything that they have in their house. Like I'm really nosy. I don't do it, but I always want to know. I'm curious. Like, oh, what do you have in here, and what's inside this drawer? But for now, I feel like I like to put the viewer at kind of a distance where you're kind of looking at something. And no one's ever come out while I've taken a picture, except for one time I had a guy. He had driven up. The house was dark, and I needed some balloons, and I had a balloon set up actually this painting right here. I didn't actually have that heart balloon, but I fabricated it, so I needed a balloon set up to get the lighting right. So I went to the florist and I bought 2 white balloons and 1 red balloon, and I tied it to this random house. It had the exact lighting that I needed. There was nobody home. So I tied the balloons real quick, and I started taking photographs, and then the owner of the house drove in and saw me in my minivan, like this girl taking pictures of these 3 balloons, and he goes, oh, and he waved at me, and I was like, oh, hey, I said, I'm so sorry. I said, is it okay if I take some pictures of your house? I said, I'm an artist. I'm trying to get the right light. And he goes, oh, that's okay. He's like, I thought you had some delivery or something. But I'm sure it was bizarre. Like some girl taking a picture at night with balloons in front of her house. So I've had a few run-ins with people, but everybody's really nice. And then they find out I'm an artist. They're kind of flattered, like, oh, okay, sure. You can paint my house.
Hey, Anna. I remember when we moved back to San Antonio, being in a conversation with you about your grandmother's objects that you had kind of visited with, and I was wondering, is there any kind of reflection on your own identity or your own? Do you see any kind of any of your own family or your own experience getting back in touch with your family moving to San Antonio? Specifically coming out in any of these particular paintings?
Oh yeah, well, it's interesting. Well, we moved from San Antonio. We were always moving. Like, we never had one house. We were always going from one rental to the next. We were constantly moving, so we never had our own place where it's like, this is my house where I grew up. But my grandmother did, and both of my grandparents did. So we stayed in their houses for a long time. But I would have these recurring dreams of going back into my grandmother's house that I had forgotten something. And then recently, about a year ago, they demolished my grandmother's house. So me and my sister went in there, and we, because they were kind of, they had a bunch of stuff everywhere. So we went and dug and found all these objects, bottles, and I found a jewelry box in my name. But I was obsessed with the house for some reason. I was, like, I felt like I'd forgotten something in there. And I did. I found, there was stuff. There were like a huge stack of photo albums of me as a baby that I'd never seen before that were buried under mountains of rubble. And because they were kind of they weren't like hoarders, but they were pack rats, and they had a ton of stuff. And so they were just going to abandon it and let them tear it all down. So we went in there and dug out stuff. But I was really obsessed with that idea of like getting back into that house, because we weren't able to go in for years after we got over the age of 10. They never let us back in the house once my grandmother died. And so I was always obsessed, like why won't they let us in? And it's because they always thought it was messy, so we could never get in. But I always had these memories of like, oh yeah, that's where I used to eat with my grandmother, and that's that window. So I was always obsessed with the idea. So maybe it does have something to do with that. I can see that. But getting back in there was really gratifying, and getting the stuff out and just like seeing it one last time, and now it's all leveled out.
You're able to go into the
yeah, I was able to go into the house finally. Yeah.
Do you still have those albums?
Yeah, I do have those objects. I have a bunch of Avon stuff that she had, because she used to sell Avon, but she mostly sold it to herself. So she had, an enormous amount of Avon stuff, and just weird trinkets, and this jewelry box that we found buried. It was under, like, in the backyard under some boxes, and it had a bunch of these stickers from the 60s, and it said my name, Anna Maria, tacked out in, like, tape on the window. Because my dad was saying, you don't need to go in there, none of that stuff belongs to you. And I'm like, yes it does, I'm going back in there. And I did, and then I showed it to him, I said, see, this was mine, she wanted me to find it. Because like, you open it, it had like a bunch of Avon trinkets and jewelry and stuff inside. So I still have that box, and it's awesome, it's like a huge big box. And I found a bunch of other stuff, and I have some of the Avon stuff. I have a truck, I have a food truck in San Antonio, and it has a Botanica attached to the truck. So in the decoration of the Botanica window, I have some of my grandmother's objects in there, just because they're cool. They're like old vintage Avon, like old cats and just, the kind of Avon stuff. And one of the perfume bottles still smells like her. It just has the tiniest little bit left in there. When I open it, it smells just like her, so I try not to open it, so I don't waste it.
Anna, can you mention about next week in your truck
Oh yeah, next week I'll be here in the gallery.
for West?
Yeah, for the West Open Studio. So I'll be here Saturday and Sunday, and I'll have some of my stuff from the Botanica. I've got incenses, and I'll have some floor washes and bath products and stuff